Welcome to Tech on Tech, a podcast series focused on the critical business challenges facing today's tech firms with an emphasis on enabling technology. I'm George Humphrey, Senior Vice President of Research here at TSIA, and I'm joined here today by Merlin Bise, Chief Technology Officer of Inbenta. We're going to try to spice things up, get a little bit heated here because we were just talking about how freezing it is where we are. So let's get into it a little bit. Merlin, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience here? Give us a quick background before we dive into the topic where we'll be discussing voice AI.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. Merlin Bise, CTO, one of the principals at Inbenta. My career, spans about 25 years in tech, and primarily an early part of my career was focused on fraud and risk, compliance, governance type, data, heavy banking influence into what we did, and then obviously identity proofing and management. So compliance is a big part of kind of my background, and I've been in AI now. I mean, obviously I've worked in AI building models and stuff for years, but I've been focused on this new AI world now for about three and a half years. So it's an exciting time. Obviously things are moving fast. So very excited to be here.
Very cool. Yeah, I was just having a conversation with an executive the other day, and we were trying to figure out if there were any conversations that we're having that aren't around AI. I don't think people are getting sick of it yet, and I think it's going to be with us for a while.
Yeah.
Merlin, I got a question for you because we're talking about voice AI. How do you define that for the audience?
Yeah, so to me, it's really a conversational solution that's intelligent. So if you think about traditional phone systems and things in the past, it very much rules based. You're going to get fixed answers. It's controllable, but customers get frustrated because where it really fell off, unless you invested a lot of money, or is using one of the really large systems, the system had issues mathematically keeping up. So it lost track of previous conversations and things of that nature. So you could go off the rails. And that's why customers will get frustrated, where it said press 2 to speak with sales. And sometimes they would get confused and think you press 3. And so voice AI, has opened up a whole new world. I mean, it's intelligent. It has the ability to think if it's programmed correctly. You certainly can build compliance and controls around it so it's safe. But it can impact a variety of places in your business, including internal usage. It's way beyond just external. So to me, it's like it's a branch of what you're trying to accomplish with not only your customer success, but customer service, outbound. Outbound's a big area that we may get to today in our conversation, but outbound's a huge expanding area because of the sheer intelligence and, the way these models can perform. I mean, if they're contextually programmed right and they can keep track of the conversation, they can be really powerful.
Yeah, so I worked a long time in voice, in contact center, phone systems you mentioned. And these call centers, contact centers, they live and die by their IVR, much in the same way that many support organizations became critically dependent on chat. And now, because of AI, generative AI, we think chat isn't as awful as it used to be. Is this going to have the same impact, voice AI, on IVRs and contact center solutions? And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely it will. And I think the challenge right now, and you're spot on, man. When we acquired Inbenta, so this is a great analogy, and we acquired it about 3 months later, ChatGPT hit. I thought I had a really nice little cute investment, great chat company, and it was obviously outperformed anything I'd played with in the market. But man, when large models came on the scene, it was just like it flipped it on its head. So I think, we had to pivot and we had to build, more intelligent systems. And I think the same thing with voice. You're going to see a huge transition because you don't have to worry about call trees. You don't have to do all these other things. What you really have to do is shift to compliance. You got to make sure you got the right safety controls. You got to be able to gracefully bring a human in if necessary during a conversation. So you got to figure that out, audit everything. But what you can do with it and achieve, because a customer could call you concerned with a support issue, you could address that. they could then pivot right in the middle of that conversation. The minute they know that you've solved their support question, they could pivot and say, oh, by the way, I want to upgrade my account. Well, guess what? That voice AI can do it. So they can go from a pivot in support to an upsell, okay, or a billing resolution issue, provided it's set up and trained right. I think the biggest challenge is that I think call centers face is, and I think they're doing it, obviously the good ones are, is they've got to have, I don't know if I want to call it a shadow, but they got to have some kind of mirrored experience where they're introducing AI kind of as a parallel, so they know that it solves these issues properly they're trying to solve. And start, one of the things too, we're working with multiple call centers on this issue, is start with stuff that they know they can win. So you start with some of the easier tasks, as long as you build graceful handoff. But eventually, I would argue that the technology exists today to run a call center. Let's not kid ourselves. It's already here. It's the people that actually systematically deploy this right are going to get to that stage. And what's going to happen is their best people, don't think about, I'm going to replace all my people and save all this money. What you can do is you can accelerate and propel your business to new territory, because you can take all these. One of the things you're going to hear a lot, maybe you have, I'm hearing it a lot because I'm talking to a lot of people in AI in general, is all the wasted energy that we do every day performing simplistic tasks. And this back to call centers. I need to reset my password. I don't remember, my last 4 digits of my account number. All these things that take time. I do believe that AI is going to shift that, and you're going to find real fast who you're like, and it's really thinkers. Them are the people that are going to exist and really be important, is the people that can process information and think on their feet very clearly. They're going to accelerate your business. So call centers are going to be able to go into, I think, more advanced territory. They could start beyond just being a support call center. They could start doing sales enablement, outbound. I mean, there's all these strategies, because AI is going to require smart people to run it. But yeah, the tech's already here. It's absolutely, you're spot on. It's going to replace, just like chat. I mean, chat's completely different. We don't even call it chat anymore. We call it assistance, because of how powerful it is, the stuff it can do. I mean, trigger flows, whatever you want to do. So,
Yeah, you just said something that really gave me pause. Going back to the early days of contact centers, sure, you had canned software that would come out of the box, whether it was via Genesis or Cisco or whoever call center solution, but the implementation was often really complex because of the design that had to go into it. And nowadays in AI world, we call that the last mile problem.
that's
And so
correct.
now you've got contact centers and AI. Can you talk a little bit about this last mile challenge and opportunity, and maybe how you're helping customers overcome some of those challenges? Is this a big service intensive upfront dance that you do with them?
Yeah, I mean, one of the advantages we have is, and again, it's going to be publicly available. I think middle of April is the target date. Is our Encore platform obviously is going to make it easier, but what we've really focused on is providing a call center has, and you're exactly right. These systems were extraordinarily complex, took a lot of planning and execution, runs on some very important software, obviously, large data center footprint. Now, again, AI runs on a large data center footprint too, so we're not getting rid of the hardware. But the advantage is, if it's documented right. So if a lot of the flows and things and how you call it trees, or how things work inside of a call center, if that's documented, there's actual ingestion capability. So I don't want to get too deep off here, because we'll get in a whole nother subject. But there's agentic tools that we've built that has the capability to take an architectural flow and information from one of these organizations. We can build that into strategically building out their voice platform. So we could even leave the phone numbers in place and simply build out the exact experience with AI, so it can basically mimic, and they can watch it perform in real time while a human is talking at the same time to the customers. So this can be integrated into these systems, so AI can learn over a short period of time, and then they can transition. So the old way of doing it, if you can imagine from an agentic perspective, you got to have somebody that's smart, that can feed data into a system. They got to be able to look at the plan and execute, adjust it, build out how fundamentally AI is going to build the infrastructure to actually perform. And then agentic AI is capable of executing that build with modifications and testing. And then you do parallel testing. You shadow the activity, make sure it's right. Then you got to focus on an organization that has two fundamental things. Number one, they have the ability to provide really important safeguards to make sure, like if you're doing refunds, obviously there should be a cap on that. You don't want to give somebody $100,000 when they're supposed to get 100. So you've got to have somebody who has capability of building safety controls based on content you probably already have in historical information, because that text, that audio can be converted to text. It's not real complex. That can be done. But then second of all, you've got to make sure that they have the right audit controls and the ability to actually view activity in real time. Because one of the challenges you have is to go autonomous. So if we're talking replacing the human, where 80% of the calls are handled with some type of intelligent AI, which is really the target. It's not 100. It should be 70 or 80, because if you're doing that, you're being proactive, and guaranteeing yourself success. If you just turn it on and say, hey, we're all using AI now, you're going to hit some roadblocks. So audit, compliance, and then safety controls are extraordinarily important. And then the last, I should have said three things. Have a graceful way for a human to interject or interact, and have the system should be smart enough to pass it. So we've been doing that for a long time. But if there's confusion or frustration, these models are smart, man. These models are you look at this new open source one, Kimmy, that just hit. I've played with it the last week or so. That thing, 2.5, it's scary how good it is contextually understanding what I'm talking about. So the models, and these are going beyond just the voice, the audio side of the models. We're getting into large models doing the contextual understanding, but it's smart enough to know when someone's frustrated. Then escalate that. Get your best people to handle it. That's kind of a long way of answering it, but strategically, it's magical. And by the last thing, voice is driving a lot of our conversations with customers. So, a lot of people are leaning in. They're wanting to make the move and incorporate voice into their strategy. No question.
It's very cool. So what you just described there made me really think of an integration of a voice AI application with an AI-powered sentiment analysis that is really as advanced as probably some of the best customer support people that are out there today.
100%. You and I may be experts in certain fields. I've learned with AI that it's hard to be an expert in anything. But what I would say, yes, I could, if it's music or voice, you probably could answer it. So the point is, if someone called you, you could answer a complex question. But I would argue, if the content if you were feeding that content into one of these models, it's going to answer like George. This is what people miss. We require our customers, and it's basic. So we got a really large genealogy org that we work with, huge. It's the largest one in the world. So they have like 150 words that are spot on. It means something to their org. Then they have all the content, obviously, that gets fed. But the 150 words allows AI to really shape how they respond. So it's the DNA of that org. It's the same thing with you. If you recorded 25 hours worth of audio talking about all the things that voice AI means to you and things you've learned in call center experiences, that model is going to be a whole lot better than myself in answering voice questions. Now, I didn't try to give you a new career, but it could. But that's essentially what we're talking about, is if the content being fed into these systems is right and accurate, okay, these systems are good enough to contextually build a really strong, relevant, accurate, conversation that nobody's not going to like. They're going to like it a lot. As long as the latency's not bad, and as long as it's not robotic, people love it. They're not. And by the way, last thing is the age group that we always think will not like AI. A lot of the testing on these voice systems, they're fine with it. And that's, I'm almost at that age group, but That's, but that age group is actually accepting it because in some ways it sounds like people in their community. It talks very clearly. It's not, as fast as I talk, and they like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I went from absolutely hating these text chat assistants 2 years ago to where now I would prefer to work with that as a
100%.
and I think we're right there with voice as well. And for the audience, you may not know this, but this is actually a clone of Merlin speaking today.
That's right.
Wouldn't that be cool? Maybe we'll do
Merlin
that
AI.
in the
Yeah, yeah.
future.
Hey, there's a
Merlin
company that has Merlin AI. I need to try to
AI.
reach out to them and get some royalties. But anyway.
There's so many play on words there. Any future technology is indistinguishable from magic. That's why we have
Yeah,
Merlin here today.
that's right.
But so I've got another question for you then. So that's a lot of the technical operational side to enable it. Can you give the audience an image of maybe a couple of real use case scenarios? We're seeing a lot of verticalization of these AI technologies, which is what's really shining. I don't know, maybe a retail or some other
Yeah,
scenario.
absolutely. Yeah, so I'll use one that's a real world thing we're working on right now that's kind of cool. So there's a restaurant chain. I'm not going to use their name because we probably don't have permission, but it's very large in Europe and the US. And, they have some really good fried chicken. There's a certain amount of herbs and spices that go into it. But anyway, so one of the challenges they have is we're primarily doing this in Europe. Customer picks up, their bag of chicken and biscuits and whatever they have. And it's not hot or it's not to their, they're not satisfied with the order. And so the way it's happening today is they've got to call a number. Now, keep in mind that these franchise locations are not all on the same, ERP or CRM systems or, point of sale systems. So it's a variety of data. There's no centralized management yet of all that. And they're trying to reel it in. AI is going to do it for them, by the way. But, so they're handling with the phone calls, about $9 a click. So here was my strategy. Let's incorporate voice AI. I built, and I'm not bragging on this, but I've got scanning experience with OCR that spans over 20 years. I mean, believe it or not, I lost most of my hair building the first medical scanning solution that was introduced. Mises Healthcare, Siemens, a lot of these people used it. I worked with a group, real smart guys who put it together. But so I had a lot of experience. So I said, hey, let's scan the receipt. Let's take a picture. We'll capture all the details. Let's let it talk to a voice solution, get resolution, and you keep it under $1 easily. And you'll have all that data in a beautiful database. You'll know if they try to commit fraud or use the same receipt again. We can track all that. We'll get the email through voice. If there's any issues, we'll show them a deal. They can hit select, or save. Let's do this with voice. And so it's transforming how they interact. It's going to change the whole game. And by the way, all this content that's now being collected, an audio file if necessary, as well as we're doing a text readout. So we're transcribing the audio file in a variety of languages, by the way. We're supporting, I think, up to 8. That's all being put in, and we can do more, but it's all being put into a database that as they centralize this, it all comes together beautifully. So that's one unique way we're doing it and saving them, 85%, and it's more accurate. They can track it because if they're just doing a traditional phone call, they got to go back and listen to it to make sure it's not fraud. They're not going to do that. And so that's a retail case that's really fresh. The other one is a large credit bureau opportunity we're working on right now that we're going to transform how customers interact with standardized, rules and governance for certain type of credit issues. So if you can imagine when a consumer calls a credit bureau, there may be 112, 113 different reasons they're calling. It's pretty crazy. And you think that's bad, just times 1,000 for the tax code. But when they call the credit bureau, what they're finding is, there may be content that's out of date because they haven't refreshed it. Their KMS hasn't updated quick enough. And so sometimes the consumer gets something wrong and then it's got to be correct. It's a hassle. So first thing we're doing is we're making the knowledge center intelligent, but then we're building in the capability of voice and digital access to that content. And it's refreshing maybe every 4 hours or every hour. So it's always accurate. the consumer can have a real conversation in real time, fully audited. So this is recorded digitally as well as the audio. If they're doing voice, it's all, audited and recorded. And then all that transcription data is now back to your sentiment analysis. It's being even done, sentiment analysis being done either voice or digital. That's all in a dashboard for review. It has an immediate escalation to a human if it feels like there's any unresolved issue. And the AI is smart enough that we've built because we're using it. So it's kind of wild what we're doing. I don't want to get off on this, but and I'll go fast. So we've taken the knowledge, we've built really strict intent. So we're not ever going to share the wrong content, but we are polishing the content with the contextual model. So it sounds very human. So there's no robotic feel like, I want to buy a red car. Well, only this red car costs $300. We want to say, great choice. Red cars are beautiful. It builds something inside of you, your esteem. This is a great model to look at. We want it to sound right, but we still want to lock it into an exact answer so there's no errors because consumer credit's critical. So we've done that. But what's really cool is it can have a conversation. If you're mad, it can say, oh, it sounds like you're a little frustrated. We're sorry about that. We're getting somebody right now. We want to make sure, and it's having a conversation while it's being escalated to a human. So there's really cool things that voice allows us to do that even a digital assistant, even though it's contextually smart, it can't touch somebody like the sound. It's like when someone gets hearing, or if they can see, that is so much more powerful. I mean, it's like something comes on. So like you talking to me, you can send me an email, but I'm never going to relate. I can see these guitars. I can see, it's just, there's ways that visual and audio, when they collide, it's powerful. And that's what voice does. That's going to transform how AI interacts with not only, enterprises, but consumers in general. It's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And in those two scenarios you just gave, there were a couple of compelling points that you hit on. So there was cost reduction, there was improved efficiency, and there was enhanced customer experiences, all through AI voice. Very, very cool. And so there's that MIT NANDA study that said 95% of AI implementations are failing. I think that's far enough behind us now that we're no longer worried about that.
By far.
But I think what was really key about that, the devil was in the details, that these were not well thought out implementations versus what you're saying. There's very intelligent design behind where and how to apply voice AI. So I've got one more big question for you then. So being a CTO, I'm sure there are many CTO things that keep you up at night, but I'm sure also you have to work with and relate to the CTOs in your customers' organizations that have to very seriously think about the employment of voice AI amongst many other types of AI they're wrestling with. What would be the key pieces of advice that you would give to them and how you would help them overcome some of the concerns they may have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, number one, you're going to have to stay compliant. Compliance has got to be critically important to you. And basically what I mean by that is, there's going to be certain standards. If you're dealing with medical type data or medical use cases, obviously HIPAA is going to apply. I mean, as a standard, you should meet ISO certifications. If your provider or you cannot meet ISO certifications, you probably shouldn't work with them. And they should be using models or third parties that actually, have SOC and HIPAA capabilities and PCI. If they're deploying their own, free AI models on some, open source only host, you got to be careful there. Then beyond the normal regulation, GDPR and things, and obviously, where the data resides is critical. I mean, that's why Inbenta has multiple regions around the world. It matters. You got to make sure you have safety controls. One of the biggest mistakes companies make, and I knew this from being in a highly regulated industry for years, is they've got to have safety controls. Don't trust AI to know when to say no. Not saying it can't say no, but we really want AI to say yes, so everybody's happy. But it's got to say no sometimes to, how much they're charging, how much a refund is, how much medication, or, hey, we're going to process your order and we're going to charge you $1,000 versus $10. You've got to have controls there. And then audit trails are critical. One of the biggest things when I got to Inbenta that I loved was everything's tracked. Question, answer, full conversation, time, if it escalated to a human, who answered it. I mean, and then always, this is the big one that I hammer home, always have a human backup. We have a very good infrastructure. Trust me. I would compare our, we're I think 4 nines or 5 nines, and we're striving for 6. I mean, I'm on that stuff all the time because I've had 6-9 enterprises before in my career. So, but have a human backup. If you can't pivot off of AI to somehow get humans engaged to service your customers, now it doesn't mean you have to service them fast, but you need to be able to pivot if there's a problem, because right now AI is, you're exactly right, the 95% failure, there's no way that's accurate anymore. The models are too good, and I think people are taking more time to deploy. But have a human backup, and then strategically use AI to help educate. The advantage AI gives these CTOs is it gives everybody in their org 24/7 access to the tools and services they're using or selling. It allows you to train 24/7. For the first time ever, you can be a global educational business with real-time access to content when you put it out. And, like when we published something yesterday, we put something out at 3:00 about Encore, our new platform. And this morning I woke up with a variety of emails because people had went and looked at it, learned, and they had feedback. But I think that's the magic of AI too. Beyond deploying the tools, use the tools internally. Sometimes, now some internal people can be a mess, but in most cases, your internal employees want the same success that you want for your org. Get them involved. They don't have to build it, but let them have a slight opinion of what's going on so they can give you feedback, because chances are a lot of the feedback you're going to get from them, they're not experts. Sometimes your customer's not an expert either, but they can give you free, very good advice, and don't take it personal. AI's changing. I mean, and the last thing I would add, and this is not a pitch for us, because again, I wouldn't call us a voice like global framework, but by the way, we have our own deployments in our data centers. We are partnering with other voice like, global solution providers. There's like 4 or 5 that really are truly these infrastructure for just voice. We're partnering with some of them in really hard regions. And if you're not using like us, that can pivot to different voice models. We didn't build some of these audio models, but we should be able to use them all. And so the importance is don't get vendor locked, because these models are moving like that. There's last year was this one. Now there's one taking over. And then you got this new, don't lock yourself into the big 3, even though they're critically important. We host on one of them. But be in a situation where you could deploy voice AI very inexpensively with some really inexpensive models, or you can go to really good ones that cost more, but you need to work with a provider that fundamentally understands where you're serving your customers. They can guarantee latency. They can guarantee the contextual, piece of it, so that you got a really good human experience. And then, work with a provider that can actually take all your knowledge, which can serve digital or voice channels as one knowledge center. One of the other big flaws is you have all these providers that's got their knowledge base over here. Then they got another knowledge base for voice. And sometimes the customer gets 2 flavors of ice cream, depending on, which place they're at. And you just got to work with somebody that understands the enterprise side, because again, you got to audit it. You got to have safety controls. And I just think, then there's orgs that are doing it right. Obviously Inbenta is. We're not going to, take the reputational risk of not doing it right. But that's my 2 cents on it. What CTOs should be thinking about, because voice does open you up, because regulators are probably a little more skeptical because they can't see it on paper. But honestly, if you're working with someone that can transcribe the content, it's on paper. So it can be audited.
Words of wisdom. There was a lot to digest there, all incredibly valuable. Merlin, I think we're out of time. That went by really, really fast. You and I joked the other day we could talk probably for hours on this topic.
We could. Yeah.
Maybe you'll come back and chat with us some more. But I really appreciate you taking the time, giving these insights out to the audience. For the audience, thank you for participating and hearing about the magic of voice AI with Merlin from Inbenta. Thanks again, and have a great day.